Long before the rise of Rome, before Christianity took root, before science wore its modern face, there lived a man who dreamed in dialogues and whose words would echo through millennia. His name was Plato. He was born in 427 BCE, during a time of war and greatness in the city of Athens, Greece, a city alive with art, politics, poetry, and debate. His real name was Aristocles, but the boy had broad shoulders, and his wrestling coach nicknamed him Platon, meaning broad. The name stuck. He came from nobility. His family could trace its bloodline to the last kings of Athens, and his relatives were among the elite. One uncle, Critias, would later become one of the notorious 30 tyrants. But Plato himself was drawn not to power or riches, he was drawn to truth. As a young man, Plato trained as a wrestler and poet. He wrote plays, studied music, and absorbed the teachings of Heraclitus, Parmenides, and the Pythagoreans. He was bright, sensitive, and observant. Yet everything changed the day he met a peculiar man in the marketplace, a barefoot philosopher who asked more questions than he gave answers. That man was Socrates. Plato became one of Socrates' closest students, sitting at his feet, walking beside him through the dusty agora, watching as Socrates prodded merchants, soldiers, and politicians into thinking more deeply. Socrates wasn't interested in answers. He wanted to teach people to ask better questions. To Plato, Socrates was like a spiritual father. He said later that Socrates brought reason and the soul into the light. And then, in 399 BCE, it all fell apart. Socrates was put on trial for corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods. Plato watched helplessly as his beloved teacher, the wisest man in Athens, was sentenced to death by hemlock. It was a wound that never healed. Where others might have become bitter, Plato began to write. He gave Socrates life again, through dialogues. He turned philosophy into drama, conversations of love, justice, politics, and the soul. Plato traveled after Socrates' death. He journeyed through Italy, Egypt, and possibly India, meeting mystics, mathematicians, and rulers. These encounters deepened his ideas of a reality beyond what we can see, a world of perfect forms, ideal versions of justice, beauty, courage, and truth. Reality is merely the shadow of the ideal. He returned to Athens in his 40s and founded a school, the Academy, the first known institution of higher learning in the Western world. Etched above the doorway were the words, "Let no one ignorant of geometry enter here." Here, students would walk and debate in gardens. They studied astronomy, mathematics, ethics, and politics. They questioned everything. One of those students would later become the teacher of kings. His name was Aristotle. Plato taught that the physical world is like a cave, where people see only shadows. The truth lies outside the cave, in the realm of forms. To become wise, one must leave the darkness and turn toward the light. His most famous works include The Republic, a vision of a just society; The Symposium, a poetic dialogue on love; Phaedo, Socrates' final hours and thoughts on the soul; The Allegory of the Cave, the journey from ignorance to truth. Plato was not a recluse philosopher. He engaged with politics, even tried to advise rulers. He visited the court of Dionysius I, tyrant of Syracuse, hoping to mold a philosopher king as he imagined in his most famous work, The Republic. But it ended in betrayal and imprisonment. He was sold into slavery briefly before being ransomed by friends. Even so, he never gave up on the dream of a just society led by wise thinkers. He believed that love was a ladder to the divine, and that justice begins with knowing yourself. Plato never married. Some sources suggest he loved deeply but quietly, possibly with a philosopher's restraint. He had no known children, but in a way his true children were his students and his dialogues, living conversations that would speak to generations unborn. He continued to teach, write, and debate into old age. Plato died around 347 BCE in his early 80s. Some say he passed away peacefully at a wedding feast. Others say he died in his sleep. Either way, he left behind a body of work so vast and profound that nearly every philosopher since has been, in some way, a student of Plato. Plato's Academy lasted over 900 years until it was shut down by a Roman emperor. His writings shaped Christian thought, Islamic philosophy, Renaissance humanism, and even modern psychology. He gave us the very idea that the world is knowable, that the soul matters, that love is sacred, and that truth must be pursued even if it cannot be perfectly reached. Plato once wrote, "This world is not my home. I seek the world that is to come." And so he searched, not for gold, not for power, but for what lay behind the stars. He was a poet of ideas, a guardian of the soul, and a bridge between what is and what could be. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more timeless tales and truths from history. It is a pleasure to serve you. Many blessings to you.